Welcome to Business Buying Strategies, the UK's #1 podcast for smart business buyers. Hosted by Jonathan J., one of the world's leading authorities on small business acquisition. This show helps you buy your first business without risking your own money. Ready to get started? Don't forget to grab your free business buying toolkit, packed with reports, videos, and cheat sheets at dealmakerspodcast.co.uk.
Hi, this is Jonathan J., and welcome to Business Buying Strategies, the #1 podcast for people interested in buying a business without risking any of their own cash. Now, this week we have something a little bit different. Every few weeks, I run a coffee morning on Zoom with about 25 attendees answering their questions on business buying. This week, you can listen in to part of that Coffee with Jonathan webinar. So welcome to everyone. In the next, 40, 45 minutes, as long as it takes really, I'll be answering any questions you've got about buying a business. I don't have any PowerPoint slides. I don't have a presentation. I don't have an agenda. That is going to be decided entirely by you. So this is interactive. This is for people who really want to get involved. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to talk about buying a business and any questions that I can answer, because you've told me that you listen to the podcast, you read the books, you watch the YouTube videos, but that's kind of like a bit one way, isn't it? That's not interacting with me. So what can I help you with? What challenges have you got? What can I help you with? What can I answer? Mikhail says, do you help in setting a company's structure required to run it smoothly? And then you've put in brackets, board. Okay, that's kind of two things in one question. Company structure, I interpret, and our sort of terminology around company structure is using the right holding companies with the correct articles of association, the correct SPV structure, and so forth. So the answer is absolutely yes. But then you kind of change the question a bit by putting the word board, which presumably is short for board of directors. So Mikhail, tell me a bit more what you mean by board of directors, just so I can make sure I'm answering your question. He says, also access to trusted and accountable accountant. You don't see that very often. An accountable accountant. I know you've got a reliable lawyer. We've actually got 3 law firms and the equivalent accountants who are very proactive. But you need more than a lawyer and an accountant. So Mikhail says board of directors. So I'll stick with Mikhail's question, then I'll move on to yours, G, and Satya. I can see the other questions coming through already. So questions for me. This is interactive. This isn't passive. This isn't just you listening to everyone else. You're here to have a question answered. So let's make the most of it. So Mikhail says, how do you set up the board of directors? Okay. I always know when someone talks about a board of directors at this stage who hasn't bought a business, talks about board of directors, I know you've been listening to someone on YouTube who's very, very elderly, who's I believe 80 years old, and has a sort of a rather different approach to me. So we've got hundreds and hundreds of business buyers in our community. None of them go out and find a board of directors because you don't need to. You do not need to do that, okay? So if you've been spending time looking for a board of directors, unfortunately, you've wasted your time with that because you don't need that, okay? You just need you. You need a deal team, but they aren't directors of the business. They're people that you pay for their services as and when they are required, all right? And you've named an accountant and a lawyer. So what I would say, Mikhail, is that if you don't know anything about the business that you're buying, you need to find someone who does, because you probably need someone on your side as an advisor. But that doesn't mean that they become a director of the business. Now, they might do, but they probably wouldn't start off that way. But anyone who's going out there, I get messages on LinkedIn saying, Jonathan, will you join our board of directors? And I thought, I don't know you. Why would I do that? And I know where they've got that from. And it's kind of bad advice that's out there on the internet. And the internet is obviously brilliant for getting information for all different people. But is really bad when it comes to buying a business because there's so much misinformation. I've never seen so much misinformation than anything else on buying a business. Mikhail, hopefully that answers your question. Let me just whiz down the questions here. Yeah, Mikhail's just told me who he's getting the advice from. Yeah, is out of date. Yeah, and Phil says using GPT as a business consultant. Yeah. I don't know whether you're saying that tongue in cheek, Phil, or you're serious about that, but I think it can only take you. So far. And Mikhail says, "I see what you mean now. Thanks for the clarification." So I've helped one person this morning so far, going down a track that basically would just waste you months of your life, would massively overcomplicate it, and will not help you buy a business. Okay, so Mikhail, I think you've got your money's worth from this morning's webinar. So I'm going to go to our next question, which is, Mark, what is the best way to protect yourself and other businesses you own when buying another business to run alongside existing businesses? Brilliant. Okay. Kind of part answered it already. It's in your corporate structure. So it's in the way you set up the company. So you never buy a business in your own name. You never use your existing company to buy a business. You would keep it in a completely different holding company structure. So it's understanding that, Mark. So presumably you've got businesses already, which is brilliant. You know what you're doing. So it's all about a separate company structure. And as you probably have realized, again, people in business know this pretty quickly and pretty early on. You want to avoid personal guarantees. You don't want personal guarantees. Personal guarantees can absolutely sink the ship and can be absolutely disastrous for you and your family. So when you say protect yourself, I would say it's the correct company structure, it's no personal guarantees, and the third element of protecting yourself, Mark, is the correct amount of due diligence. And I see people, sometimes who should know better, skimp on due diligence. So due diligence is the checking that we do to make sure the company is what we think it is. Because the seller could say anything, right? And they do. So we need to verify. We need to run cash flow forecasts. We need to factor in any finance and the costs of that finance and maybe changes in interest rates as to what the business can afford. What you don't want to ever do is over leverage. It's very easy to do, and sometimes you can do it. You can put in a lot of debt into a business, and if the business can afford it, that's absolutely fine, absolutely brilliant. But if business can't, then that's a problem. So this all comes out, Mark, in the due diligence. So Mark, 3 ways: corporate structure, no personal guarantees, and due diligence. Mark, just send me a quick message to let me know that you heard that and if that makes sense to you. Okay. While Mark is doing that, Phil said, why would it run alongside and not integrated? The integration, I think, could come later once you know what you've got. So let's say you've owned it for a year, but you've contained it within a corporate structure that's separate to what you've got. And you put it almost like in an incubation. Is that the right word? What is it when you go through during COVID, when you're put in like an isolation? Yeah. So you keep it in isolation. And then when you know exactly what you've got, all the skeletons have come out the closet, it's running well, then I think an integration works better. And that's me being super cautious. That's me being super cautious. So hopefully, Mark, you heard that and that made sense to you. Mike says, yes, perfect sense. Been bitten by PGs before, never again. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, anyone who's been in business for a while just knows how that is never a good thing. So is sometimes in an acquisition a PG required? Yes. So you take a judgment call on that, or you say, no, I'm not going to do it. I'll just find another business where there isn't a PG required. So you might look for longer, but you are reducing your risk dramatically. It sounds great, Mark. It sounds like you've got businesses already. Now is the time to do a deal, by the sounds of it. Let me move on to someone else with a different question here. So let me just take that out because I've done that one. Alan. Hi, Alan. Alan says, most sellers want cash-free, debt-free. Now, Alan's question continues. Okay, that's not the question. That's an opening statement. Alan, do you mind if I challenge that just a little bit? Because I don't agree with you. Most sellers do not know what cash-free, debt-free is because they've never sold a business before. So they don't know. So don't ever, I'm talking to everyone here, don't ever assume something because I believe that when you know the right way to buy a business, you want people to fall in line with you. You're not going to fall in line with them. So let me just read the rest of Alan's question there. In stock sales, okay, so Alan, I think you're outside of the UK, aren't you? Because I think you let me just sort of translate that, if you like, for my UK listeners. So you're talking about a share sale. Alan, you're outside the UK, is that right? He says yes, yeah. Oh, you're in Spain. Yeah, okay, yeah. So just want to make sure, because when we say stock in the UK, we typically are talking about what's on the shelves in the warehouse. So I just want to make sure that we're talking about the right thing. So in share sales, so a share purchase, if the liabilities are reasonable, should it be considered in the price? Yeah, absolutely. So you can adjust for the liabilities. So actually, there's a slight contradiction with the first part of what you're saying there. When you say most sellers want cash-free, debt-free, if it was debt-free, there wouldn't be any liabilities, right? Now, I don't want to do cash-free, debt-free. I want the cash because I can use that as part of the purchase, and I want the debt because that reduces the purchase price. I can refinance it. I can let it sit there. Yeah, debt. As a consumer, usually means a bad thing. You've got credit cards or whatever. Debt's a scary thing, right? But in business, debt is your mechanism to leverage for growth. So, Alan, I think the answer to your question is yes, but I wanted to give a little bit more flavor around that.
You listen to the podcast, but maybe you're not sure about the next step. You can have a call with one of Jonathan's team, a one-to-one Zoom call, 10, 12, 15 minutes in duration, where you can discuss your particular situation, what it is that you want to achieve, and maybe how we can help get you there an awful lot faster. So if you're interested in having a call with one of Jonathan's team, then find the link in the podcast description, book your time and date, and get some clarity about your business buying journey.
Right, lots of questions, guys, lots of questions, which is brilliant. You know something, when I do something like this, I do worry that no one's going to have a question and we're going to sit here just staring at each other. But that is not what is happening here. Alan says, thank you for the response. Alan, my pleasure. Linda said, I would like assurances that you have. Okay. So when you say you'd like assurances, let me just read what the question is before I give you assurances, before I know what the assurances are. A strong deal team that is interested in home care businesses, an investor who understands I have no money to invest. However, I've got good business experience and acumen to contribute. I don't know why you're asking me whether I can assure you of that. I show people how to buy a business. Having an investor is never part of it. I do actually have some clients who sometimes do that, but we don't provide you. We're not like an angel network that provides investors. Okay, we have a mentoring, guiding process where we work alongside you to get your first deal done, or your second, or your third, whatever it might be. So we don't provide you with investors, but you don't need an investor. So coming back to your first part, Linda, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. You want an assurances that I have a strong deal team that is interested in home care businesses. Lawyers, accountants, due diligence people, tax people, human resources people, commercial real estate people. They don't really have an interest in specifically what that business, and if we're using the word interested in the same way, they do all sorts of deals with all sorts of different businesses. When you say home care, is that domiciliary care? So Linda, just tell me, just very quickly, type yes or no. Is that domiciliary care? Linda's given me a yes. All right. So the answer is, I've got clients who are doing buy and builds or roll-ups, whatever you prefer. I prefer buy and build because that's the UK way of saying it. Roll-up is American, but in domiciliary care. So I have one lady who's on her second one. She just bought her second one. So she's gone from employee to 1.9 million revenue, 400,000 EBITDA in 6 months. Okay. I have another client who, from working with me on Mastermind in a 4-year period, did 23 acquisitions and sold for 18.5 million. So the answer is, probably don't need to say anymore. The answer is yes. Okay. Linda, hopefully that answers your question. Let me know if that answers gives you the reassurance that you're looking for. Linda also said, Linda, sorry, there's more parts to your question here. Do you help in identifying motivated business targets? Yes, we do. Linda says, I've approached an accountant that has told me there is no such thing as buying businesses with no cash down from the buyer. Linda, I'm afraid either your accountant is wrong or your accountant hasn't understood the question. Let me explain. When we say to someone, we're buying a business, we're not going to say this, but we're saying it to each other. You and me talking. We're buying a business, no cash down. We're saying none of our own cash. It doesn't mean that the seller doesn't get anything. My best example of this is a client whose first deal the business acquisition cost £10 million. And the seller got £9 million on day one. But you know what, Linda? That was a no cash down deal. Because my client, who was an employee, did not have £9 million. They didn't put any of their own money in, but the seller received £9 million on day one. That is a no cash down deal. So if you explain it to your accountant like that, I mean, quite frankly, it might mean you need a new accountant. I would introduce you to my accountant, and my accountant has actually bought other accountancy firms, no money down. Okay, so my accountant gets it because my accountant's done it. Okay, right, lots more questions. Let me whiz through these here. Billmon says, what's the best way to join your program under my low financial status? Billmon, are you in the UK? I don't think you're in Vietnam, right? Well, we've got lots of free stuff like this. This isn't costing you anything. Our live events, you've got to be there because it's a live event. So I can't really help you with that so much. So I would stick to the videos and the podcasts and the things that you can access online free of charge for the time being. Linda says, I need a new accountant. Yeah, you're not the first person to come to that realization, okay? Right, I'm just looking through my questions here. We've got lots here. This is really good. Right. Satya says, how do we take the next step after watching videos? Can I tell you something, Satya? I think a lot of people get stuck watching videos. It's almost like an addiction, and they can't stop watching videos, and they never stop watching videos. You're clearly not that person. How do we take the next step after watching videos? I'll tell you the next step. We've got a few options. Is to chat with one of my colleagues, to have a Zoom, a one-to-one Zoom. This is me talking to you as a group. I think that what you need is something one-to-one. And it doesn't cost you anything. But I'll tell you how to do that later, if that's something that you're interested in. That would be your next step. Right, lots of questions here. I'm gonna answer all of these, or as many of them as possible. So let me just see what I've got here. Satya says, sure, I'm interested in going ahead. Great, Satya. I'll sort you out with a one-to-one Zoom for you and for anyone else straight after this, okay? So when we've done the questions, I'll tell you what you need to do to get a Zoom call in. Neil says, just wondering, what websites do you tend to visit on a daily basis to see what's going on and what's out there? Like some will look at fashion websites, check the news, etc., that sort of thing. Okay. Being a business owner, entrepreneur, where would one tend to go to get the latest on what's happening out there, the lowdown, reference, some info perhaps? Presumably you're talking about looking at websites about buying a business, right? Is that what you're asking me, Neil? Just to make sure I'm answering the question correctly. You don't say that specifically, but I'm kind of assuming. Neil says yes. None. It's the very short answer. None of my clients, Neil, look at websites to find businesses to buy. Do you know why? Because that's what everyone else is doing. And that's where it gets competitive. And what happens when something's competitive, it becomes like an auction. What happens in an auction? The price goes up. What happens in an auction? The seller plays buyers off against each other. I think that's a horrible situation to be in. I don't want you to be in that situation. None of my clients look at websites to find businesses to buy. So sorry, that's not the answer you were looking for, but it is actually the correct answer. Hopefully that helps. Who was asking me that question? That was Neil. Neil, just tell me if that makes sense, Neil. Not the answer you expected me to say. Billmon says, I want to buy a business in the UK as a foreigner. How can I do it? No different to someone who's in the UK buying a business. Now, In terms of third-party finance, if you don't reside in the UK, that's tricky. But I actually encourage people to buy their first business without any third-party finance, so it doesn't make any difference to you whatsoever. So I think that you shouldn't let that hold you back. If you want to buy a business in the UK, there is nothing to stop you. There you go. Nice short one there. Obviously, more in terms of entrepreneur mindset, really, not resourcing for businesses. Oh, again, sorry, I don't really do that. I don't really look on websites for that sort of thing. It's a good question. I think these days people sort of listen to podcasts and things like that. Yeah. But Neil says, thank you there. Yeah, sorry, I wasn't answering the question you'd asked me, but there you go. G says, I have a question. If you don't use brokers or websites and you don't know what industry to go after, how can you look at different businesses to see what would be a good fit? Well, we have a methodology that gets sellers to come to you, G. And it's all different types of sellers. So if you don't know what type of business to buy, you can speak to sellers of all different types of businesses, and those and you get your variety of options that way. Yeah, so that is again quite a quick answer to that one. Alan says, is it tax efficient? Right, now, I am not a tax person. I'm not qualified to comment on tax, so I'm not giving you tax advice, just so you know. Alan says, is it tax efficient to keep the retained earnings in the business and pay the seller at closing instead of them taking it as a pre-completion? Oh, actually, I can answer that. The answer is yes. Now, I don't know, are you in the UK, Alan? I can't remember. But typically, the reason I ask if you're in the UK, because you use the phrase at closing, where in the UK we'd say completion. Closing is an American expression. But generally, Alan, yes, it is far more tax efficient. Yeah. And I can say that without being a tax advisor. Alan says no tax advice required. Oh, you're in Spain? Yeah, of course, at completion. Yeah, so generally speaking, the answer is yes. And G goes on to say, so I could look at different businesses and see what I like. 100%. Because the mistake I see a lot of people make is that when they try and do this by themselves, they buy the wrong business as the first business. And you've got to buy the right business as the first business. Otherwise, you'll never buy the second business. Okay. Great questions, guys. WK Ho says, I'm talking to an owner who is hesitating a lot. He wants to sell and retire, but he feels unsafe to show me the profit and loss. Okay. It's a $2 million US business. The factory is in his personal name, blah, 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 blah. It's been a lot of time. It's been a bit of time. Should I give up and move to another potential business? Okay. I'd be asking yourself this question. Now, we don't know each other, so please take this in the very positive way that it is intended. If you're speaking to the owner of a business who's at retirement age and wants to sell, and they don't want to show you the profit and loss, which is basically, this is the money that comes in, this is what we spend it on, and this is what's left over at the end, the profit, the problem is probably yours more than theirs. Okay, so take this in the very positive way that I mean it. It probably means, and again, I'm trying to be positive here. If you know me, I'm a very positive person, but I'm also realistic. It means that they don't trust you with their numbers. And if they don't trust you with their numbers, the problem could be a credibility issue. The problem could be a credibility issue. Now, I cannot solve the credibility issue in the few minutes that we would have allocated to this question on a webinar. What I can tell you is that there is a process for solving the credibility issue. There's certain things that you can say and certain things that you can do that mean from the moment you meet them, either on the phone, on a Zoom, on a face-to-face, you've got the credibility is there. So the problem, WK, is not theirs. And you'll find you'll have the same problem everyone you meet. So you need to solve that problem first. Otherwise, you're going to be wasting a lot of time. Let me know if that helps you. Let me know if that just gives you a little bit of direction there. Because knowing what the problem is the first step to solving the problem. If you don't know what the problem is, you'll never be able to solve it. G says, I was thinking about coming to your 3-day event in a few weeks. Yes, it's only like 3 weeks away. Is it worth me coming to this or just joining Mastermind when I'm ready? It's entirely up to you. G, have you spoken to one of my team, Jamie Lee or Jeremy? Have you spoken to either of those people? Have you actually had a Zoom call with them to discuss this? Because different things are right for different people. There's not one size fits all. So have you had a chat? You have. Okay. Who did you speak to? Jamie Lee or Jeremy? Okay. Have another chat with her. And she'll help you decide whether the 3-day or Mastermind is right for you, because it is different for different people. Female. Okay. Yeah. Jamie Lee. Have another chat with Jamie Lee, and she'll be able to help you with that, because we've got a 3-day event, live event, not on Zoom, live in a beautiful hotel venue for 3 days. We're having lunch together. We're having dinner together. It's a real chance for us to get to know each other, for me to sit down, have a coffee with you, find out how we can help you. It's a great learning experience. You'll leave with an entire plan. Or some people say, well, I know what I want. I don't want that. I want the full 12-month, 36-month experience. I want to fly first class. But it's entirely up to you, G. So have a chat with Jamie Lee, and she'll be able to help you. Right. More questions, different questions. Loving this. This is really good. I'm enjoying this. Oscar says, hi, Jonathan. I'm in the property business. You know, I have a lot of people on Mastermind who've been in the property business, because the returns are not as good now as they used to be, right? I'm in the property business, and I found a property directly with the seller. He currently runs it as a business center. Oh, that's nice. Okay. And I was considering buying both the business and the property, then using a commercial mortgage to pay him off. Okay. However, he sent me the accounts last night, and the profit isn't high enough to cover the mortgage payments. Big problem. So that plan won't work as I had hoped. What kind of creative offer could I put forward in this situation? So, strategy lesson here: you never make an offer. If you start making offers get rejected. You have to go and you feel under pressure to go and increase the offer. It's rejected again, and it's just a mess. Never make offers. Sit down, Oscar, with the owner of the business and say, look, I'd love to buy your business. This is the challenge. How do we fix it? That is the best way of doing it. Okay. It's a good question, by the way. Right. I'm trying to answer different questions from different people. G from earlier says, talk to me about others who've changed industry. I've got a primary school. Okay. I love this story, is the best one. A primary school teacher. And let's face it, primary school teachers are probably, you would not imagine, to be the most commercially minded, if you know what I mean. I've known a few primary school teachers. I probably wouldn't put them necessarily as business people, but a long-standing Mastermind member was a primary school teacher, changed to being a deal maker about 4 years ago. And his most recent deal, his first deal was a 7 million revenue business. His most recent deal, I think, is his best one, which is a business that does 3.5 million of annual revenue, but it's a service-based business, so it has a very high margin, and it does just over £1 million of profit. Now, I know I've looked at the accounts. That's real numbers. That isn't someone sort of exaggerating to impress me. That's actually real numbers. And he was a primary school teacher with no background in this particular sector. So what I would say, G, if he can do it, you can do it. Okay? Let me know that you heard that. What industry was that business? He would not want me to tell you the industry. So my client base, my Mastermind clients, they all know, because we all share stuff and we trust each other. He would not be happy with me saying to the general public out there in the big wide world what he does, because then there'll be 20 people all over it, and that would sort of, he doesn't want me to create competition for him, if you see what I mean. So I have to protect my clients, because that's what they paid me for. And G says, fair enough. So thank you, Ron. Sometimes I said that once to someone got really stroppy with me, but G, you didn't. So I appreciate that. Oscar says, thank you very much. That was really helpful. That was the question about the business center and the property. I'll do a couple more, I think. Andrew, hi, Andrew. Andrew says, deal sourcing is a challenge. That is your opening statement. Now, we know each other slightly. I'm going to challenge you a little bit on this. Deal sourcing is not a challenge. It's a challenge because I know, Andrew, you've been to some of my low-cost events. You're a big fan of the YouTube. I know that. But Andrew, you're kind of like on the first page of the cookbook. You're not seeing the whole recipe. You're just seeing the first few ingredients in the recipe. If you think that deal sourcing is a challenge, and clearly you do, then you're not doing it right. It's as simple as that. None of my mastermind clients find deal sourcing as a challenge. Okay. Alan, hi Alan again. Alan in Spain. Alan says, what is a reasonable deferred payment approach in the UK? Understanding each deal is unique. Would 5 years be a reasonable? Should I push it beyond 5 years? The longest any of my clients has done is 20 years. That was for an accountancy business. P.S. Due to owner operates the business 3 day a week, trying to spread the risk. Yeah. So it's really how much can you negotiate? Now, we've got some really smart ways of negotiating it. And can I just say something? The idea of buying a business and splitting the payments over 3 years. Now, I used to say that a lot on videos, and people now think that's the norm. Maybe it was during COVID. It isn't anymore. In fact, that is not how we buy businesses anymore. We've got far smarter ways of doing it. That was all a bit basic. That was great in COVID when it was a different market. It's different. It's different now. It's more sophisticated now. There are more people out there buying businesses now than before. So we need to be the smartest business buyers in the room. The smartest business buyers in the room. I think I've answered every single question that's been put here. Look, I can tell there's lots of people interested in this. So I'm going to invite you to do something that's not going to cost you anything. Would you like to have a one-to-one chat with one of my team? People are saying, what's the next step from here? Here's something that's completely free of charge. And I'd encourage all of you to do this if you like what we've been talking about today. If you like me, if you like my approach, like my videos, but you want to take the next step. That's very important. You want to take the next step. You're not satisfied with just watching videos. Go to dealmakers.co.uk/clarity. Go there, and there's a little diary. Have a morning appointment or an afternoon appointment, and have a chat with Jamie Lee or Jeremy. Have a conversation with them. Tell them where you're at, what it is that you want to do, and they'll either guide you to a £49 deal club evening, maybe to spend 3 days with me. Maybe that would be the best option for you. Or maybe you say, look, I don't want any of that. I want mastermind. And they'll talk you through which is the best mastermind option. So that's what you need to do. If you're serious about this, if you enjoyed this, all the people who've been interacting so much during all these questions. So there's people like G and Satya and Alan and Bilmon, who else? And Linda and Mikhail and all those people who've been interacting during this day. You should be going to book this session right now. Neil and Mark, and just looking down the questions here. You should be doing a clarity call session with one of my team. 15 minutes of your time would lead you to a conclusion as to what to do next. 15 minutes. That's all it takes. Any questions about the clarity call? Any questions about how you book it? Now, what I would ask you to do, can you do something for me? If you book in a clarity call, we can only do about 6 a day. So we've only got 6 left for today. Don't do it and then ghost my colleague. Don't be a ghost. Don't be just someone who disappears. Don't be someone who doesn't show up, because what you've done by reserving that space, you've taken it from someone else who then can't have that space. So please book this if you're serious about having a chat, and be someone who shows up. I've got to say, it's never a good look if you want to buy a business, but you don't show up to the first meeting. It doesn't help. It never helps. Okay, so if you want to do this, now is the time to do it. Okay, so go to dealmakers.co.uk/clarity, have a chat with Jamie Lee or with Jeremy, have a conversation with them, and send me a message on LinkedIn and let me know how you got on. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I've enjoyed having my cup of coffee with you this morning. I think that we should do this again sometime, maybe next month or something, but if you are serious about doing this, book in your clarity call. Do it now. We've got about 6 appointments for today. So grab one of those, have a chat with Jamie Lee or Jeremy, and take the next step now. All right, guys, it's been fun. It's been great. Thanks very much, everyone. Thanks all.
Thanks for listening to Business Buying Strategies. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. And remember, for more resources and guidance on buying a business, visit dealmakers.co.uk. Have you downloaded your free business buying toolkit yet? It's packed with resources to help you close your next deal. Get it now at dealmakerspodcast.co.uk. We're back in a fortnight. Until then, here's to your next successful acquisition.